Welcome to the Monos Pod, episode 14 with Tino and Matt. What's up, Matt?
Going well.
You
Going
wearing a
good.
Yankees hat for Volpe or what?
Um, yeah, since he was my rookie of the year pick, at least on the AL side.
So
I
for
have
the
I don't have my Arizona hat for the NL side.
is that for Alec Thomas or for Corbin Carroll? So for the listeners, we're discussing. This might be news to Matt. We're discussing changing the name from Demonos to unintentional tanking because I think that's a really. What was the other one we talked about? We talked about one more over text.
Uh,
I like the name unintentional tanking. Uh, this episode, we're going to go over some of the call ups that have happened since the last pod, some of the minor leaguers that might be on the verge of coming up, and then a couple of prospects that we're excited about watching or we've been watching thus far. It's just time to check in, given all the prospect hype, call ups, performance, disappointments, surprises. So let's get started. So what I did for the exercise is I took my top 100, my latest top 100, and just started going down the list of who's been called up and what do they look like so far. The two at the very top of my list that I think are the two that we should talk about first are Anthony Volpe and Corbin Carroll. I think they're the two with so far the most impact, the two with the most kind of staying power. I don't think either of them are in any danger of ever going back down again. They both hit towards the top of the lineup already. They both have moved up from lower positions in the lineup. I think both teams realize that they are superstars. When I took down all of the stats to talk about for each player, I did it yesterday. So for Volpe, it's not taking into account his 2-for-3 day with 3 runs and 3 RBIs. Just to put that out there. What are your initial impressions of the two players? Do you compare the two players? Do you have them on the same level?
Yeah, I think they're still both in the same tier. I think what you mentioned as far as batting position has been quite significant as far as the team's confidence in them.
Mm-hmm.
I think they probably, even though we roster them, and it's frustrating that they were batting 6 and 7 for Carroll and 9 for Volpe the start of the year. It was frustrating, but it was probably the right move. You don't want to put too much pressure on them at the start.
Right.
They already have a lot of pressure, but they more or less earned those spots. Carroll was backed into number 6 yesterday. I think Arizona gets to and they've admitted this. They get to look at me, I'm the manager type of thing. I think what's his name? The manager.
Bello?
Yeah. He's funny because he admitted it the other day that he gets too creative sometimes and it's not about him.
Right.
But he tried to put a bunch of righties yesterday, going against a soft tosser from the left side. So Carroll was back down to number 6. It didn't work very well, but they did win. They scored just a couple runs. But anyway, yeah. So they've both lived up to the potential so far. They're getting on base. Carroll initially wasn't walking. Now he's working counts quite well. He's working walks. He's going to the opposite field, which he's always done quite well. 10 steals. What does Volpe have? Around 10 as well.
So Volpe is 8 for 8. Carroll is 10 for 10.
Yeah. Carroll was nabbed yesterday. He would have gotten his 11th. It was really close. Great throw by Casey's third catcher there, who's just in there for defense. But yeah, they're dynamic. And what I like about them for young players is their working counts.
Yep.
They're not striking out all the time. They just have that baseball acumen, and I don't like this word IQ or discernment at the plate, which is top notch as base runners as well.
So a couple things. I think it's interesting that if you look at the group of first year players as a whole. You've got players who are too patient, and you've got players who aren't patient enough, right? As we move down the list, Jordan Walker is not patient at all, right? 3.8% walk rate, one of the things that got him sent down yesterday. Gunnar Henderson, on the other hand, 18.8% walk rate, but a zone swing of 55.3% versus a league average of 67%. And he only swings the bat 37% of the time, right? So he needs to be more aggressive. Miguel Vargas, another one, needs to be more aggressive, an 18% walk rate, but he's not swinging the bat enough to make any sort of impact on the ball. He has 0 home runs, and his OPS is 701. Tristan Casas, same thing, not swinging the bat, walking a ton. So you've got these players who are either uber aggressive, like a Gabriel Moreno or a Corbin Carroll, or even a Brett Beatty, or you have hitters that are or Francisco Alvarez, or guys who are being way too patient. I think Volpe falls in the too patient category as well. But it's interesting because you want all these players to kind of come to the middle where they're taking walks, they're utilizing a good eye, but they're also impacting the ball with power. And I think that just comes with time. One of the things that one of the questions I wanted to ask you for this pod is, fantasy baseball analysts or prognosticators are so quick to jump on yesterday's results, right? To make proclamations about who a player is. And so there was a ton of talk the last couple of weeks about Corbin Carroll and what's going on with his not walking. He hadn't taken a walk yet. Like, is he the same player that we thought he would be? Is he going to get on base enough to steal the bases that we thought because he's not taking walks? And what it leads me to is, are people saying this to create content, or are they saying it because they actually believe it? Because Corbin Carroll also has a couple years of minor league, experience in history, and a scouting report from when he was at Lakeside High School in Seattle. Like, the player doesn't morph into a different player the minute they hit the major leagues. They may, if they're elite, they'll go through some ups and downs, but where they're going to land because the talent is so good. And I would argue that Volpe and Carroll and even a Jordan Walker and Gunnar Henderson, we know who they're going to be. There's not a whole lot of variance. I will be surprised if there's a lot of variance in what their careers look like as far as versus what we're predicting right now. You just have to be smart enough to see the big picture and not based on.
And I think that's one of the weaknesses is I think a good challenge is to go back to 2022 and isolate stats for a month or each month, and you'll see there's hot hitters that don't have the track record. So at the start of the season, you have these rookies that come up that have great hype and have great months, but they may not have the track record to support that long term. Even Outman's going to be decent. He could be like a Jock Peterson type, but his K rates,
the swing and miss is not
right?
Good. The zone contact is not good.
Yeah, so everybody's talking NL Rookie of the Year right now, but this is just a month. Give it time, you know. And rookies coming up too. Carroll's going to get challenged. He's going to be given pitches in the zone, and he's starting to hit, and he hit them from the start, I should say. And so now they're going to test him with out of his own stuff, and he's being patient. There's ebbs and flows, and some players are going to be swinging a lot. Some are not, based upon the pitches they're given, and that's what makes a good hitter, right? And I like what you say about over patient, right? Like, Vargas has gotten a lot of good pitches to hit, but he's taking a lot. He's not being aggressive with his swing.
Right. His Vargas. So I've got a bunch of numbers here, but Vargas, when he swings, he hits the ball, right? He's got an 8.5% swinging strike rate as a rookie. That's really good. His zone contact, interestingly, is only 79%, which I was surprised by. So he's missing in the zone some. But he's got a 40% ground ball rate, which is right about where you want it to be. So his whiff rate is in the 52nd percentile, chase rate's in the 92nd percentile. So it's a very good eye. Speed 78th percentile. So there's these things about Vargas that if you are paying attention to specific stats, he looks good, right? Good
Hmm.
eye, swinging at the right pitches, doesn't chase. His chase rate is more than 10% below league average.
Hmm.
His whiff rate
What
is
about the
right at
quality
league
of
average.
contact, though?
Well, that's what I
What?
was getting to. So, okay, so we know he makes contact, right?
Hmm.
We know that he has a good mix of ground ball and fly ball, but then, and his BABIP is 300, so nothing really to get too worked up about there. Launch angle is 10.9 degrees so far, not optimal, but not horrible. But his average exit velocity is 86.1 miles an hour, 20th percentile. Max exit is 1081, which is 47th percentile. Barrel percent 3.9%, 22nd percentile. Hard hit 24th percentile. So he's not impacting the ball, right? The contact he's making is not good. And so if you have no steals, and you're probably not going to steal more than 10 bags or so, it doesn't matter if the chase rate is good. It doesn't matter if the whiff rate is good. It doesn't matter if, the swinging strike rate is good if you're just a punch and Judy hitter. So
Hmm.
I would rather see him take bigger swings, right? And take more chances to try to make more impactful contact, which is why some of the stats I just read don't matter to me as much anymore as maybe they used to. You can have an 80% zone contact rate, but be taking such big hacks that when you actually hit the ball, you're hitting the ball out of the park, right? Aaron
Hmm.
Judge is a sub 80% zone contact guy. So I guess what I'm getting at is when we're looking for potential breakouts or prospects, let's make sure we're looking at the right stats,
Hmm.
not just the stats that we see other people spew, or not just the stats that we want to see. Because I think Vargas is a great example, at least so far this season, of a player who has some very good metrics in certain places, but is a crap player, right?
Hmm.
I still have him rest of season. So I did rest of season for a bunch of prospects. I still see 270, 370, like 750 or so, because I think the power is there. 70 runs. I only have him down for 12 home runs. We're already a sixth of the way through the season. He doesn't have any, right?
Hmm.
About 60 RBIs and about 6 steals because he's not running yet, and his speed percentile is not as high as it was last year. So
Hmm.
am I down on Vargas? No, I think this is where I thought he was all along. I just don't think he's up to the hype that some other folks gave him coming into the season. I want to get back to Volpe and Carroll real quick because I think it illustrates the other side of what I was just saying. Um, I love the fact that they both struggle a bit with certain things, and you see them making adjustments on the fly, even
Hmm.
within the first 100 plate appearances this season. Carroll, as an example, like you said, more discerning eye. He's decided to start to take some walks. He has the ability to adjust to what pitchers are doing with him and still maintain the quality of contact and still maintain the launch angle and still hit the ball where he wants to hit it, right? I love that about Carroll. I think I may have, even though he was in my top 3, I may have underestimated Corbin Carroll. To me, his rest of season he will end up 290, 350, I think right around a 900 OPS, believe it or not, with 95 runs, 25 homers, 80 RBIs, and I have him down for 50 steals. He already has 10 through 1/6 of the season. That's probably a top, for sure, top 10, maybe top 5 fantasy player going into the 2024 draft. I think he's been phenomenal. And then Volpe, I have similar but different. So the thing that I love about him is obviously he really struggled out of the gates and he was striking out a bunch, but he still maintained a 15.6% walk rate, still stealing bases. His ground ball rate is higher than it's ever been in the minors. And yet he hit at the bottom of the order 12 times, but his last 9 games, he's been the leadoff hitter and 11, and he's led off 11 times now for the Yankees. And so there's stuff he's doing to impact the game, both real life and fantasy, that the Yankees see. And so despite the fact that he has a 211 average, he's still he's provided 2 homers and 8 steals, right, already, and 8 runs out of shortstop without even hitting the ball. And the Yankees see enough progress that they move him to the top of the lineup.
Mm.
I don't think he's not a 300 hitter. I think I can see that from watching him. The strikeout rate, I think, will come down quite a bit, but he is what we thought he was. He's a 20 to 25 home run and 40 to 50 steal shortstop, which I have him and Carroll very similarly because of the position. I think Carroll is going to put up better numbers, but Volpe, you're getting it from a shortstop. I love them both. They make baseball fun for me right now. They're must-see TV as far as I'm concerned, both of them. I've started watching Yankees games and I hate the Yankees.
What I like about Volpe too, and Carroll the same way. So Volpe here is all fields, right? So I'm just looking at his chart here for hits. So he hit 1 home run to left, 1 to right, a triple to right, 2 doubles to left, and then 4 singles to left, 1 to right, and he has a lot of infield hits as well. But I like the balance there, and that's what you want to see as far as somebody who isn't going to be maybe that rookie that starts out decently and then implodes, right? You want to see that balance all throughout, and Carroll's the same way as far as distribution of his hits.
Carroll's funny though. So his pull rate was 54.4%. Which I was surprised by, but I also know that he has the ability to go to the opposite field. And I wonder where that's coming from, if he's trying to hit, and he's got a 44% ground ball rate currently. I think both of them, one of the things, again, I like about them and comparing them to Vargas as an example, is I think they're both just trying to hit the ball hard. And they don't care if it's going to, they don't care where it's going. They're just trying to impact the ball. And I think that they really benefit from that approach. You watch their swings, they're swinging hard, especially for their size. It's also interesting. We're talking about one guy who's 5'9" and one guy who's 5'11", right? And they're 2 of the most powerful players on this list. I love them.
Both of them fool broadcasters sometimes, right? They think they're going to be fly ball outs and they just keep going and going.
Right.
They have a lot of quick wrist action there in their swings.
There's a lot of carry. You see Volpe hit a ball out to right center, and you just don't expect that from a 5'11" shortstop, right? Who's hitting leadoff to hit a ball out to right center, but he's got that kind of loft and power on his swing. If we can, so the next 2 guys I have on my list, and this is basically based on my top one. I went from the top of my top 100 down and picked out all the players who are in the majors now. The next 2 on the list, I couple them together in part because they've scuffled a bit out of the gates. Jordan Walker and Gunnar Henderson. What have your initial, so 2 things, initial impressions of the 2, but also the way the market was for Jordan Walker and the way people were talking about him during spring training leading up to the season, you would have thought he was Aaron Judge, right? So what do you make of where he's at now and the hype kind of that surrounded his arrival?
Yeah, I think he was always going to be a 4 category guy. He's got decent speed, but not long term, right? And he's still really young. He doesn't have AAA, so I just think he's one of those that, you know, St. Louis is being patient with him, and we need to be patient with him as well. He's not up there as a ready player. He's a work in progress with tons of talent,
right,
and tons of power. So I would say the same thing about Gunnar too, right? I've watched most of the Baltimore games. He's working counts. He's hitting it hard when he makes contact. He's walking. It's just going to come. I just think we just need to be patient with both of these young guys. Yeah, their adjustments aren't as rapid as Volpe and Carroll, but they have, you know, both of them have more power potential than both. Yeah, so it's just a patience thing for me. I don't like, again, when we get write-ups on on these players, especially on Gunner. Like, you know, is he flopping? Well, come on, it's just 1 month, and he's on a good team. They're going to protect him. Just give him time.
So, question for you: the adjustments that we talked about with Volpe and Carroll, right? Where it's like next game sort of adjustments, where they're able to do it on the fly. They don't need a ton of ramp time. Is that a talent, right? Is that a skill? Is that something that we can attribute to the most elite prospects versus the prospects that take a lot more time to develop? I'm trying to think, like, did Acuna, obviously Acuna and Julio stumbled out, or I know Julio stumbled out of the gates a bit, right? But it only took him, I think it probably took him the same amount of time to really start to ramp up. Is this quick adjustment a characteristic of the most elite prospects and something that helps you differentiate between the most elite and the next tier? Or is it something that everyone that's more random that some guys can do? It just happens that Volpe and Carroll, the two that can do it right now, in your opinion?
That's tough. That's tough to discern, right? What I look to is, you know, if the hitter has a 40%, 50% K rate and isn't walking, that's a big difference there.
Sure.
But if you take somebody like Gunner, who is taking pitches, who is walking, whose 2 home runs have gone opposite field, maybe the adjustment is taking time, but that gives me confidence that he is going to adjust. I think Adley started pretty slowly too last year in the first few weeks, right? But he had that walk rate, right, and everybody was confident in that. Maybe he's not getting great luck in what he's putting in play, or what he's putting into play isn't hard yet. But that it ultimately came around because he had that discernment. So I think if we're taking Carroll and Volpe, and then we have another player that is striking out a lot, that is struggling to know the zone and to recognize pitches, that's a red flag. But I don't see that red flag in Henderson and Walker.
Something interesting about Henderson is, yeah, to your point, yes, he is walking a ton. He is impacting the ball. 92.5 mile an hour average exit velocity is 86th percentiles. Launch angle is 12.8 degrees. You know, barrel percentage 7.9%, 69th percentile. There's a bunch of things about Henderson that look good. And he is whiffing a lot, not 9th percentile whiff, not chasing a ton, but only a 20. So a couple things: 26.3% pull rate, meaning he's going oppo and center most of the time, right? And you said his 2 home runs went out opposite field. I wonder if he's letting the ball travel too far, right, before and making a decision, and he's being way too patient. I think he would benefit from trying to get out in front of the ball a lot more, making quicker decisions about whether to swing or not. Sometimes you're going to make a mistake. Sometimes you're going to start your swing thinking it's a fastball and it becomes a breaking ball. But if it is a fastball and you started your swing, you're getting out in front of it and you're lifting it, right? Because the swing is there, the power is there, the physicality is there. To me, there's an approach or a mental thing going on with Gunner that I think he'll fix. But I think that's what's inhibiting him right now, is he's going off. But I don't know that the 2 home runs to left are indicative of something positive as much as it is that's just where he's hitting the ball right now because of his approach. But I have tons of confidence in him. I'm not worried about it. I did find it interesting, and I don't love X stats, but his XBA on Fangraphs is 189. So it's not as if he's getting unlucky. He's got a 306 BABIP and a 203 average. So it's not as if he's getting unlucky. A lot of it is actually him. As far as Jordan Walker goes, I think I'm a little more worried than you. I'm not jumping to any conclusions after 68 plate appearances. And he does hit the ball super hard. If you watch it, it looks like he's almost like he's dangerous, that he's going to take someone's head off as hard as he hits it. But 3.8% walk rate, which is 12th percentile. We were already worried about his ability to take a walk. We were already a little worried about his swing and miss. He did have a 353 BABIP, but I think the combination of his speed plus how hard he hits the ball, you're going to see him run higher BABIPs probably. But there's a lot of swing and miss, and there was a lot of chase. The chase is what worries me. I know he's going to swing and miss. I know there's going to be strikeouts. I know he's not going to be the highest OBP player. But if he's chasing a ton, I don't know that he's going to realize his actual power, his in-game power. I think he's a 30 home run hitter in his sleep. The question is it 40 or 45? And I think he's a 250 hitter for sure. The question is he 280? I don't know if he's going to be elite. Let's take a quick break. We'll come right back and start to talk about some of your favorite guys like Brandon Pfaadt. All right, I got a random question for you. During the break, I got a notification on my phone that Mike Burrows, the starting pitching prospect for the Pirates, is going to have Tommy John surgery. Okay. Mike Burrows was also one, I think he was in the top 3 Stuff Plus in AAA this year to start the year. This is going to sound a bit assholic to say, but I wonder if someone has done a study or a quick look at a correlation between Stuff Plus and injury, right? Because when you look at a Stuff Plus list, especially that from Saris, you look at that list and it's littered with guys who either have horrendous injury history or are getting hurt this year, right? And I think we are trending towards a place where being at the top of a Stuff Plus list is not necessarily a good thing. Longevity and health and being able to maintain very good stuff, maybe not elite stuff, over the course of time is much more important than flaming out and going away, right? And so it just struck me when, I think about all the guys that have been on that list. You think about, the ones that come to mind very quickly, like a McClanahan, a Glasnow, a lot of the Tampa Bay guys, Fairbanks. Was
Shields high before he went down?
What's that?
Was Shields high for Stuff Plus?
James?
I mean, no. What am I saying? I
Sorry, I had to get that one in there. Who are you thinking of?
Now you made me go blank. He just went on Tommy John surgery. The guy they converted from a reliever to a starter. Tampa.
Yeah.
What's that?
I'm not
Loaded bowlers team.
Oh, Springs.
Yes, there we go. See, I got part of it right.
Yes, I think Springs had a big Stuff Plus increase. I don't know that he was at the top of that list. He had good swing and miss numbers last year. But I don't know. I go up and down that list, and anybody on that list at this point, my next question is, anybody can look at the Stuff Plus list, but my next question is, what's their health history, right? And if they've experienced a big jump on that list, why is it? Are they going to get hurt? I just think it's a question worth asking. And talking about prospects, when I saw Mike Burrows on that list earlier this year, I was like, that's interesting. I watched him pitch. I don't think his stuff is necessarily great. But that's interesting. I'm going to keep an eye on him because he's on this list. And sure enough, like Tommy John, 3 weeks later, there's got to be some correlation, right? With the effort that it takes to throw at those velocities with that kind of movement. There's got to be a correlation between that and the strain on your body and the injury risk. I just think it's something to think about moving forward. And from a scouting perspective, fantasy wise, it might make you think twice about like a Harleen Susana as a pitching prospect, right? Why is he throwing so hard? Should an 18-year-old's body be able to handle 102 miles an hour? And it's why you see
Hence just went down himself too.
Yeah.
Hence, he was taken out. I don't think they've given an update on him yet. but there's something, there's always that scouting piece too versus data. So scouts have always been biased towards big, thick pitchers, right?
Mhm.
For starters. And
Right.
they've all, even when Pedro came up, he was initially a reliever because he's smaller, threw hard. They thought he was more profiled for a reliever. They did a study on that, and there's really it was inconclusive as far as how size affects injury status for SP. But I still trust scouts there. There's something about being able to see a pitcher, how much are legs getting into it, how much like a Hunter Green, he did have Tommy John surgery. Everybody basically does young now, right?
Right.
But he has a lot of strength coming from his legs, from his whole body, right? And even Painter, who's kind of a stick, you could see there's a lot of pressure on his arm and the way he's throwing.
Right.
So I think there is outside of study, there is that piece of a scout's eye to be able to see how is the movement being coordinated? Is it repeated? Is there a lot of effort and pressure put on the arm?
I look at, so I'm just looking at my own home league team, and like George Kirby, right? George Kirby could have TJ. I'm not saying I can predict TJ at all. Nobody can really, but his very like little effort in his delivery, and his command is very good. His mechanics are fucking phenomenal, right? And I think that a pitcher like that, I feel more comfortable rostering. And when I'm scouting a pitcher like that, I more likely to gravitate towards that type of guy. Like that's part of why I like Gavin Stone. I know Gavin Stone had a velocity tick up, but that pitcher with command who throws hard but doesn't look like he's maxing out is much more interesting to me at this point. I think the risk of that high velocity max effort pitcher is too much given the propensity for injury. Even like a Mason Miller, right? So it's a good segue into Mason Miller. I do roster him. I love him. I think a guy throwing 102 is scary. But if you watch him pitch, it's not like he's, in my opinion at least, I don't see a pitcher who's giving 150% effort every single pitch. He's throwing hard, right? There is effort in his delivery, but it's not, you don't think his arm's going to break off despite his injury history. That's something that I think we should be looking at more.
Yeah. And and look at Robbie Ray, right?
Right.
It
Max
feels like
effort, screaming,
screaming,
jumping, like looking for every 1/10 of a mile an hour on his fastball through effort, and now he's out for the season. In part because of that type of effort. I think you're absolutely right.
I think another pitcher I've been watching a lot, I do roster him in all leagues, is Tyler Wells. 6'8", 260 pounds, but only throws 93. He's not, he could go higher if he wants to, but he values command. He gets mad when he walks people. His spin rates, he's 92% percentile fastball spin. Curveball spin is at 78, right? So you have a pitcher with that build that probably could throw harder that is choosing not to. And I just think unless you can do it with ease and it's more natural, why try to press it?
Right.
Especially if you're that bigger pitcher and have that extension already, right? A 93 out of your hand, and if you're 6'8", is going to be 96, 97. So why try to do it? To me, it's kind of like golf. There's something about wanting to hit the 350 to 400 yard drive, right? And you just got to be able to take out the 3-iron sometimes and just knock it 230 yards down the middle of the fairway.
Right.
And some pitchers, I think, and I think the same thing with EV with hitters too. There's kind of, since the metrics have come about, there's kind of this sexiness of wanting to have this ultimate hit ball or this ultimate pitch when really it's a lot more than that.
Right.
And you're going to risk injury.
I think we're looking for both hitting and pitching. You're looking for the player that sits right in the middle of both. right?
Hmm.
That has elite physical traits, so that when they do throttle down slightly, right? Like 90% effort is still a faster swing, a stronger swing than most players, right? 90% effort from a pitcher is still, you still want it to be 97 miles an hour, right?
Hmm.
And that's what it's like what they say about Hunter Green. If he threw 97, 98 all the time, but he could actually locate where he wanted to locate it, he's still going to be he's going to be the most effective version of Hunter Green. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, I find it interesting. And I think that we all look for these extremes or formulas that are foolproof, right? I want the guy with the best exit velocity. I want the guy who hits the ball the hardest, or I want the guy that makes 95% zone contact, who doesn't swing and miss. We know both of those things don't, unless you're Jordan Alvarez or Aaron Judge, those two extremes aren't going to win you a fantasy championship, right?
Hmm.
You need something in the middle.
Hmm.
Uh,
And a pitcher that exemplifies that on the bad side right now is Kopech, right? Everybody was really excited about him throwing well over 100, and I think he got caught up in that, and he never really learned how to throw the secondaries.
right,
And where he's getting hit this year, he has great secondaries when he could hit them consistently, but he's floated tons of them so far. And I wonder, when he gets mad, he could up it to 99, and he does well. But without those secondaries that consistently locate, you're going to get hit hard, and he's
right.
been hit hard so far. And I wonder, Chicago. I'm not sure if it's so much his talent as it is how well was he developed as a pitcher.
Right. Well, you think about like Michael Bush is up. I love Michael Bush. I will always have like a place in my heart for Michael Bush. I also salty that he's starting at third today.
Oh yeah.
Because that kind of bat with third base eligibility is going to be nasty. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I think about like a Kopech. I think of a weird but I think applicable comp like Max Scherzer, right? Max Scherzer had great stuff, didn't know where it was going, kind of pitched well, but not always great for his, really in his 20s for all intents and purposes,
Mm-hmm.
and then kind of figured it out. And now he's, a top 10 starter pitching at maxing out at like 94 miles an hour. I think he's a
Mm-hmm.
great example of why you don't have to throw 100 to be really
Mm-hmm.
effective. And it's not like his stuff is any better than Kopech. I just think he knows where it's going, and he understands how to pitch. George
Mm-hmm.
Kirby, he sits 96, but he doesn't throw a shit ton of four-seam fastballs, right? He's got a two-seamer that he can control. He throws a slider, he throws a curveball, he throws a changeup. He's a pitcher, and I think we're seeing pitchers that know how to pitch that sit mid 90s that's kind of the formula. Taj Bradley's
Mm-hmm.
another one. Good command,
Mm-hmm.
good control, good command, repeatable delivery. For all intents and purposes, two pitches, right? Kind of four seam cutter are the two pitches that he really leans on. But
Mm-hmm.
it's without effort almost. And I think he's going to stay healthy. And he doesn't have to hit 98 to be great.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Gallon yesterday, did you watch him Gallon start?
yeah, phenomenal.
Yeah, his
Phenomenal.
hits all the corners, and if you're hitting the corners and you're off the corner, the ump's going to give it to you. The
Right.
ump was expanding it for him, but if you show control, you're going to get that. And he just knows exactly where it's going. He knows he has that little card for each hitter that he pulls out.
Right.
Even like on an 0-2 count, he knows where he wants to go. He calls his own game. That's the definition of a pitcher, right?
Right.
That doesn't have to be that 100 miles per hour. Just in command and control.
Right. It's fun, and for me, I'm beginning to enjoy those pitchers much more than just the flamethrowers. Right. Either that or pitchers with one or two pitches that are so elite that it makes them interesting. So a couple more hitters I want to hit on. You had a question, right, about the previous segment?
Oh yeah, well, I just wanted to bring up a hitter that's not really a rookie that I ripped on in the past, but now I rostered, so I'm completely biased. Yoshida, Matza.
Yeah.
Um, and there's a good friend of mine that's a Boston fan. I guess he doesn't like Yosh. He wants to be called Masa, so I'll call him Masa for now on. But I've watched a lot of his at bats. He started out hot, got cold, and now is hot again. During those hot moments, he's a seasoned hitter. So you could see, like, if it's a 2-0 count, he's going to give a really hard swing, right? And if it's 0-2, like yesterday when he hit a home run against Wells, he knows Wells is not going to be a completely out of the zone. He knows on an 0-2 he's going to get a change up or something that's going to tempt him. So he was ready for that hanging change up yesterday. So but hitters like this, so he's 89% max exit velocity, 30% average exit velocity. So in some ways that shows that he has the potential to hit it really hard. But at times on an 0-2 count, when he's facing a pitcher he knows is going to, not give him that that throws hard stuff, not going to give him that hanging changeup. He'll take it to the opposite field. He'll leak it the other way.
Right.
And that's what, to me, if we're talking about pitchers in control, he's a good example of a young hitter who's seasoned in Japan, who knows what he's doing when it comes to hitting. You don't have to swing out of your shoes every time, but it's cool to swing out of your shoes sometimes, right?
Right. And you got to do it at the right time when you feel like you know what pitch is coming. It's a more advanced approach, ultimately. So I'm going to skip over a couple of these guys for the sake of time. Tristan Casas, I think we know what he's going to be. He's going to be a slugging first baseman that's not going to hit for as much power as you think he should, but is still going to get on base a ton. Brett Beatty, wait and see for me. I know he had a great AAA start, and everyone is drooling over him because he's a New York prospect. I still am probably low man on him. Too much ground ball. Don't love him. Gabriel Moreno is, I don't know that he qualifies as a rookie, but man, such an interesting profile, right? So 2.9% walk rate, which is third percentile in the majors, 353 BABIP, in part because he hits a shit ton of ground balls, 5.8 degree launch angle, 5.8% barrel, 9.7% swinging strike rate, but he hits the ball on the ground 50% of the time, but his pull rate is 26.9%. Doesn't pull ball at all, which is part of the reason why he doesn't hit for power. Line drive percent is 11.5% above league average. And his fly ball rate is 9.6% versus league average of 23.1%. So he's like pure line drive to the opposite field. But zone contact 88+%, right? So when he swings, he hits the ball. When he hits the ball, he hits line drives to right field. Question for you is, and this is what we said his profile was. I think we knew what he was coming into the season. You don't walk, you don't strike out as a catcher. You hit the ball hard, but you hit it opposite field and you hit line drives. What does that mean to you statistically? What do you think he is statistically? And what does that do for you in terms of rostering him as a fantasy player?
Yeah, I like him a lot, and he's the type of hitter that's going to have low walk rates at the start, but he's going to adjust, and that's going to increase. He is aggressive. I've watched him a lot because I watch Arizona a lot because of Carroll. I love his swing. I love his the quality of contact can be elite. And he's a smart hitter too, right? It's a big outfield in Arizona. He's a perfect hitter for that ballpark. That was a great trade. So to me, he's a catcher on the rise. I would roster him I would go out and buy low now, and because it's only going to increase. If
What
he
are you
if he
getting from him though?
if he adjusts to more pull side power, and I think because he is a line drive hitter, and if he does make those adjustments, I think the ground ball rate will decrease. So I could see him as a 280, 20 home run catcher, 20 home run plus catcher. If he moves to 5 or 6 in that lineup, he could get 80 RBIs.
Is there any indication he's going to get to that power though? I guess that's my question is
Yes,
the
I think he
numbers that
can
I
if he
see.
wants to. I think the key part is if he wants to.
Okay. I I love him. I'm on record saying I would probably take him over Alvarez, to be honest. Um,
I have a note about Alvarez in a second after you do this.
but I do wonder, like, is he decided this is who I'm gonna be, and he's gonna be a high average, less power, like deluxe version of Keibert Ruiz? That's kind of
Mhm.
what he is, you know what I mean? It's
Yeah, he
like,
hits it a hell of a lot harder though.
he does, and he hits
He's
it line drives than ground balls.
yes, uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah,
But
like Ruiz yesterday, I think Washington could have knocked out the Mets early. I think twice when they had runners on first and second, Ruiz grounded into double plays, right?
right.
I don't see Marino that type of hitter to do that. He's in control. Going back to kind of the theme of our discussion today, but his exit velos, what our average exit is 64 percentile, max is 62, hard hit 62.
Yeah.
Yeah, I I could see him playing into more power if he chooses.
I hope he does. I just when I think of it from a fantasy context, do I want do I want the average and the gamble that he's going to find more power, right? Or
Mhm.
decide to hit for more power? Or do I want like the MJ Melendez, Logan O'Hoppe approach, which is where they're hitting for more power, you're going to get more power. And in Melendez, and really O'Hoppe's minor league, but Melendez in the majors as well, they're going to get on base a ton, right?
Mhm.
And so what's more valuable in fantasy? And that, I guess that's what I'm getting at. Moreno,
Right.
if he was a Mariners catcher, I would love him, right? I would absolutely love him. But fantasy wise, I don't know if I'm willing to invest the resources in a player that I'm waiting to change his approach to hit for more power. Um, I don't know if that's something I want to invest in at this point.
Mhm.
As much as I love him as a player, I don't know that I see it.
It depends on the format too. So a points league, I think it would help. He's
Yeah,
not
he
going
doesn't strike out a
to.
ton.
Yeah, and
Oh,
our league, which has hits as a category, that's gonna help as well.
right.
You know what's interesting? Is this right? He has 67 percentile sprint speed.
I have 66. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
It says he's athletic, right?
for sure.
A funny note on Alvarez. Did you see that yesterday? So Alvarez pinch ran for Vogelbach. I thought of you because
That's got to be a joke. They probably did that as a joke.
it's
That's
hilarious.
bad. Having some fun with it, I hope.
Uh-huh.
Alvarez, and do you think Alvarez?
Speaking of awkward, so we'll bring him up because he's a graduate and we're talking about them. So you just picked up Weimer yesterday.
Mhm.
When you talk about like fast but awkward looking, Weimer's so fun to watch in that way, right?
He's fast. He's super fast, man.
Yeah, super fast. But have you seen him run though?
Yeah,
It's
he's
like
like a giraffe,
yeah, like Alec Boehm, but Alec Boehm on steroids
right?
in a 100-yard dash, right?
Let's see. His savant sprint speed is 94th percentile.
94, man. Look at
That's
that.
funny.
What's
Um,
fun about Weimer too is just watching him at the plate. It looks like it hasn't happened yet, but it looks like he's just going to hit the shit out of the ball. Uh, each at
500,
bat, right?
500-foot home run.
Yeah.
Um, I don't want to spend too much time on Alvarez and O'Hoppe, but Alvarez, I have some big worries about. I wonder if he is going to realize his power. I wonder if it'll happen in New York. whether they have the patience to deal with it. I think they've really fucked up his development in some ways by yo-yoing him. I don't trust that organization necessarily to develop young players. Ohapi is a shame. I was really high on Ohapi coming into the season. I think I was high man as far as, prospect folks go. I saw a lot of things that I liked about his athleticism, his approach, and he was showing it in his 59 plate appearances with the Angels. He had 4 home runs, 13 RBIs, was hitting 283 at 886 OPS. Wasn't walking or striking out a ton. And he did have he ran a 16.8% swinging strike rate, but he has a torn labrum. He's out for the season.
Yeah.
It's a shame, even though it's an Angel, which I root against. It's a shame because I think he was really developing at the plate. Interesting, he has 71st percentile sprint speed as well. So it speaks to the athleticism. But, I think he's going to settle in as a 250 hitter with 20 plus home runs. And to me, that's very valuable, especially on a team. If he's hitting behind guys that are getting on base, I think he could be a quite the fantasy asset.
It was, that was one of the saddest injuries for me, because I like those players that are really low round draft picks that kind of work their way up through the system. So yeah, that was too bad. Just a short update on current games. Outman, by the way, struck out with runners on first and third with 1 out.
Who did?
Outman, we were just talking about players with fast starts. But the other thing about the Pirates Dodgers, in the first inning, the Pirates stole 3 bases off Urias.
I saw that.
How many did they steal? Like 5, 6, 7 yesterday? Everybody's stealing off the Dodgers. It's funny.
Which is fun. I wonder what the Dodgers adjustment's going to be given their smarter than you sort of approach.
Yeah, and Urias is a lefty too.
Yep. So Edouard Julien is the next on my list. There was a big jump to pick him up in fantasy when he came up. He hit a couple of bombs. I think, were they both Oppo? And they might have been, and people were really excited about him, and then he got sent down again. The question I want to ask you is, he was a player whose success in the minors was predicated on power, but mostly on an extremely good eye, right? His on-base percentages have been over 400. And so if you had a 400 on base, second baseman, that's worth a ton, right? When he came up, granted, 30 plate appearances, super small sample, but a 3.3% walk rate, 30% K rate. I always worry about players whose primary skill in the minor leagues is on base percentage, right? We've talked about this. Are you able to maintain it, right? Or are pitchers going to fill up the zone, not worrying about your ability to impact the ball? What were your thoughts on Julien and seeing him in those 30 plate appearances? And is he a player you remain interested in?
I think they were trying to up his I think your point is right on, right? That if you're taking so much in the minors, is this passive approach? How is this passive approach going to affect you in the majors? And I think they pushed him to be more aggressive, right? Even his hits. So he had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out of the 6 hits were pulled to right. So they're obviously asking him to
try to pull the ball.
Jump into that pull power. But so I don't see him. I've never seen him as super elite, uber elite when it comes to second base. Second base is a clusterfuck, but I don't see him, 15, 20 home runs, maybe a decent on-base percentage, but I don't see him as that elite second baseman. Sprint speed, 72nd percentile. These are the type of second baseman that you could pick up for free in a league, right? That could give you those type of stats. So yeah, I think he's a good player, but but he's not going to put you over the top when you're playing somebody who has an Albies, right?
Right.
So you're looking for somebody, a second baseman that's going to have that competitive value against an Albies, against a team that has them.
Yeah, for me the question would be what's the difference between Julian, Norby, Westberg, even like a Zach Geloff, right? There's a range within those guys, but are those guys going to put you over the top? Are any of them Marcus Semien? Are any of them Ozzy Albies? Are any of them Jose Altuve? And if one happens to be great, but I don't think any of those guys are. But I do find it interesting, this high OBP approach in the minors and whether they're able to maintain it in the majors.
So another example, since we were talking about catcher, right, is somebody like a Harry Ford. I think he now has 19 walks, 10 strikeouts, but he's hitting the ball hard now. And I think the difference between a Ford and a Julian is that Ford is going to steal you some bases too. Ford is going to give you 20 plus stolen bases at the catcher position. So when you line up against a team head to head, that catcher is going to make a difference versus your opponent's catcher. Whereas Julian is not.
Well, and for me, just from a prospect standpoint, if you challenge Harry Ford with the fastball, he's going to hit it hard, right?
Yeah, we saw that in the WBC.
If you pump strikes to a player like Harry Ford, he's going to make you pay. If you pump strikes to a player like Edouard Julien, he's so passive. And even if he does swing, you don't know that you're not necessarily worried about him hurting you, right? In the same way that you are with some other players. So that's the thing, is that again, that high OBP approach, you get to the major leagues, they can throw strikes that aren't necessarily straight down the middle. They're not worried about you hitting a home run, right? Whereas in the minor leagues, they might be a little bit more that way. Whereas a Harry Ford, I think when he comes up, they're going to worry about him hitting a home run. He's more explosive. And so he may draw more walks because they're going to pitch around him a little bit more. They're not going to just pump strikes over and over again. To me, that's the difference when you're looking at those high OBP guys.
Or even within the Twin system, he's not as elite, I think, his hits as Ford, but Emmanuel Rodriguez, right? It's either strikeout, home run, or walk.
Yep.
But again, going back to the Nats yesterday, do you want somebody to make contact with runners on first and second who's slow and it's going to ground in a double play with one out, or do you want Rodriguez to swing and miss,
hit a home run,
and go for the home run, right, and knock the guy out?
Yeah. A couple disappointments real quick. So Oscar Colas was a player we both were pretty high on coming into the season. We knew he would get opportunity. Cuban player, White Sox, big kind of Cuban base. 1.8 degree launch angle. He's hitting 219 with the 547 OPS, 71 plate appearances, 1 homer, 2 steals. Hard hit rate is 12th percentile. Barrel percentage, 36th percentile. Chase percentile, 3rd%, right? Like, so he's chasing and he's not hitting the ball hard on average. He does have a ball that he hit 112 plus. So the power is there. You look at the body, the power is there. 57% ground ball rate. It was in the mid 40s in the minors. And he's going oppo 43% of the time. So his approach is all over the place, right? Here's my worry with him. As I dug deeper, so I saw those numbers. I'm like, okay, what the fuck's going on with Oscar Colas? He's hitting against the four-seam fastball. He's hitting 357 with the 429 slug. Okay. Against the curveball, which he's faced 17.4% of the time, he's hitting 077 with the 36% whiff rate. And against the slider, which is he's faced 15.3% of the time, He's hitting 091 with the 47.4% whiff rate. What that says to me is he can't hit anything that bends. Or so far, he hasn't hit anything that bends, right? That's scary to me. If you're a dead red fastball hitter and you hit the ball on the ground a lot, like, ultimately, what are you? To me, this is, even in a short sample, like 71 plate appearances, he's 24 years old. I would be selling on Colost. I typically want a much larger sample size, but major league pitchers are already throwing him anything that bends much more often than they do most other hitters, because they already have found out he can't hit anything that moves, right? Or at least that moves side to side.
It'd be interesting to, if you could isolate the White Sox overall. That system's a mess. When you talk about inconsistent approach, that seems like just about every player, even like a Vaughn. You have elite talent there, Robert, Jimenez, Vaughn.
They don't forget Moncada, man. Come on now.
And Moncada, right? And you know, what do they have to show forth, right? With that, they don't have a set system for teaching these players, and Kolas has no role model there for this is how you bat,
right?
As a youngster.
And I will say, having lived there and knowing a little bit about, I don't know, about the White Sox approach, Reinsdorf is cheap, right? Reinsdorf is really cheap. And the teams that don't invest in player development they're so far behind. Like, it's the reason why the Tampa Bay Rays are the Rays, is they've taken the little resources they have and they've dumped it all into player development, right? It's the Dodgers approach. It's like the old school Dodgers approach, that we're going to have the best minor league system in baseball, and we're going to invest many, many more resources than any other team, right? It's the secret to the Mariners' success at this point in time. It's certainly not free agent signees. It's development of pitching, and now Kelnick and J-Rod, and like the White Sox, it's very clear they're really screwing up the any talent. They're not bad at talent acquisition, but you just named Kopech, right? Kopech, Colas, Vaughn, Robert, like Jimenez, all these guys. It's ridiculous.
And Giolito has had some great years, but he's been inconsistent as hell as well.
Totally. We're going to take a quick break. We'll come back. We'll cover Ezequiel Tovar because we have to. And then any other player you want to talk about that's come up. And then if we have time, we can.
Tough lineup.
Little bit. Tough lineup a little bit for George Kirby. Although, did you see the 96-mile-an-hour two-seamer low and inside to Schwarber for strike 3 was nasty. I don't think Schwarber knew what was coming. I love Kirby. I love Kirby. Honestly, I think he's a dark horse Cy Young candidate. All right, one more hitter to cover. We should probably talk about Josh Young as well. Ezequiel Tovar. Actually, can I pause real quick? All right, let me pause real quick here. Oops. You would think I had done this before.
How's everything?
All right, we're back. I think Ezequiel Tovar was rostered and kept in our home league, and then was cut last week, I believe. He started as of yesterday. He's hitting 187, 247 with a 487 OPS. 81 plate appearances, 8 runs, no homers, 7 RBIs, no steals. So a consensus top 100 prospect that we saw as high as like mid-teens, I believe, at some point last year. Hitting in Colorado, which everybody loves, has now produced no homers and no steals in almost 100 plate appearances for the Colorado Rockies. Was his value wrapped up in his defense, for one? And for two, is he even a prospect for you for the rest of the season?
No, he is not. And I don't think I was very high on him. I think we both had him lower than most on lists. What surprises me is they were selling his speed a lot, and it's interesting when players come up, we do get their sprint speed. He's in 75 percentile. I would have expected the way people were talking about him, that should be in the 90s. He's a defensive first player. Colorado in the winter, fall, winter, spring, early spring, is not the best hitting environment. It's when we get to summers that we'll see the ball really carry. But at the same time, he's always been defense first. The Colorado aspect doesn't have the sexiness it once had, right? As far as
offensive
hitters and then development of hitters. I think Cincinnati has the park factor now, right?
Right.
And the future lineup to support that. Cincinnati's the new Colorado. So yeah, I'm not never been high on him. I don't buy this idea that a good defensive player is going to give you a lot of at bats in a fantasy league. I don't give a shit if he's going to have 600 at bats and he's going to bat 240 and not steal very many bases, right? That's not going to. Well, why do you want him playing a lot anyway? So yeah, I think if we were like MLB evaluators and looking for the sake of our team, he's somebody that's good. He's gonna win Gold Gloves, but he's not gonna put you over the top when it comes to a fantasy team.
Mm-mm. I agree. I find it really fascinating that we get so excited about players, and oftentimes we don't differentiate between a prospect list that includes defense versus a fantasy prospect list. I also, as you said, I think this idea that a player will have more opportunity because they're very good defensively is vastly overrated. I've heard, DVR and Eno talk about it quite a bit recently. As you said, I don't care. If the bat's not elite, I could give a shit about whether they're going to play, whether Tovar is going to have the opportunity or not. His bat's not elite. You're not winning. You're winning a championship with Ezekiel Tovar as your shortstop if you have a bunch of other great players surrounding him, not because of him.
Amador's a better Colorado investment, I think, just because of his pitch recognition at his age.
Right.
He's already a 60 hit. His power could develop. So he's more of that hitter type that could play well in at Coors, but
right.
Tovar is not that hit player.
Anybody? So the other top 100 guys, hitters that I have that are in the majors right now are Oswald Peraza, Esteury Ruiz, Zach Neto, and Josh Young. Do you want to talk about any of those four? Or are you cool passing over those four?
I'm happy about Ruiz. Ruiz has been solid. He's been what some of us thought he would be, including this podcast. He's still 4 yesterday. So he started out slow with stolen bases. He doesn't have the best lineup behind him for selectivity of stealing.
You think?
But yeah, so it's probably frustrating when he gets on base. But yeah, he's hitting oppo. He's hitting it a lot harder than people thought. When his big knock was hard to hit down in the minors. But again, we don't have access to that. So we have to see that when they come up. Same thing with sprint speed. Sprint speed's elite. I thought it was, Oakland is looking good, or should I say Vegas now is looking good with that trade they were criticized about, right? And I thought they were wrongly criticized about that trade. They got Salinas as well, who throws it easy, close to 100 in that deal, and Ruiz. What is Murphy gonna do for you if you're a rebuilding franchise? So yeah, I think I'm glad Oakland is proving people wrong with Ruiz.
Me too. I thought the Neto call up was interesting and kind of fun. I can't get past the leg kick. If he is successful, more power to you.
Did you see him? He completely nixed it on 2 strikes.
Yeah.
So why doesn't he just do it all the time?
I don't know. I think the two strike approach probably he's not going to hit home runs off of, but I don't know. Oswald Peraza, I like, not necessarily worth mentioning. Fantasy relevant, but not a fantasy superstar. Josh Young, I've been surprised by his power. I admittedly was lower on him than a lot of folks were. Um, I also will just say it's small sample. We'll see what happens moving forward. He looks like he's got enough holes in his swing that I don't necessarily think he's going to be uh, phenomenal moving forward. And then a couple pitchers. I'm going to eat some crow on Ken Waldachuk as up till now. He's been pretty shitty. Even his whiff rate is like below league average right now. I like the way he looks. I like he just has run into some really rough patches along the way, but I'm not seeing the underlying metrics that I saw previously with him. So I'm not ready to cut bait yet, but because I like the exterior factors, the park, the opportunity, but I am a little worried about him, and I am thinking about benching him in our home league until he gets it together. Taj Bradley, we talked about earlier. I think when he is given the opportunity, he's going to be very good. He looks to me to be a perennial low threes ERA, sort of like healthy starting pitcher. I don't know if he's the elite of the elite. I don't know if he's a Cy Young candidate, but I do think he's a very, very good pitcher. Hunter Brown, do you have any comments on Hunter Brown? I know he's really broken out so far this season. Is it for real to you?
I'm a wait and see on him still. The control is the issue there.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I haven't seen honestly any of his starts, so I really can't comment beyond what I see secondhand with the data.
Then I'll turn it over to you with regards to Grayson Rodriguez, since
Grayson Rodriguez, yeah. So
he is my
I've watched
number one, but you roster him quite a few places.
yeah, so I've watched all of his starts. His his stuff is there, but it's an issue of control versus command, right? His best start was actually 2 starts ago. He was getting into 0-2 counts consistently, but his changeup, which was supposed to be 60 plus, wasn't competitive at all. And he was just throwing it into the ground a lot. So he's not having the command with the off speed. But I just see this as a young pitcher who has the stuff that just needs to keep pitching and learning. His fastball is hitting 97, 98, and his extension is elite too with his size. So he's at 97% percentile with extension. So that's got to be coming up to hitters over 100.
Sure.
So to me, I like that start where he was just throwing strikes with his fastball, and he just needs to hit it on the 0-2, 1-2 counts with his off-speed stuff and make them at least semi-competitive. And he can get a lot of Ks there when he does. So there's no overall concerns there. His stuff has been getting hit. I'm not so concerned about left field in Baltimore. I think that's one of the reasons why they moved it back. Against lefties, it may be a problem, but again, it's where is he getting it over the plate is one thing, but I would like to see the control they talked about. If he could hit the corners like Gallen was, he'll be unstoppable, but he's not doing it now.
Give me we'll each give one prospect that's on the verge of being called up, and then the one prospect that we are most excited about watching, that's a little bit lower in the minors. Who's a guy that's you feel like is going to be called up, say in the first half of this season, that you're really excited to see?
Why don't you go first on that one?
All right, mine is Gavin Stone. I think that with the injuries in LA and their season not going quite according to plan, I think he's elite. And I think we've really been underrating him up to this point. I think in part because his elite pitch is a changeup. That's not something that gets you to the top of lists most often, but he's so fun to watch. And I do roster him. Like I said, I did trade Jared Kelenic for him, but I think he's going to be a mainstay in that rotation. And the changeup is Mickey Mouse or Bugs Bunny, I guess, is the better character, but it's fun. And I can't wait to see him in Dodger blue and taking the ball every fifth day. I've got a similar feeling about Bryce Miller, and I think Robbie Ray's injury is going to create opportunity for Miller. I think eventually we'll see him, and he's the opposite, which is incredible, 70 grade four-seam fastball that rides up in the zone and a really dominant slider. He's got, a bit of the Strider profile, but those two are the two I'm most excited to see that are on the verge.
And then they're basically two sliders, right? That he could throw. So
gyro and a sweeper, yeah.
Pitch, yes. And I think he has the best fastball in the minors right now. I really like what Seattle has done. And I think Miami has done the same thing in putting Perez and Miller in Double-A, especially Seattle. Freaking Tacoma, what was it? It was like a 20-18 game yesterday.
Yeah.
Just put your best pitchers in Double-A and bring them up when they're ready, right?
Well, PCL destroys pitchers, right? And
exactly,
to a certain extent.
And Double-A is a real test anyway. So build their confidence there and then bring them up. So Perez is the other one I like to. He's been consistent. Going 5 to 6 innings. 2 to 3 hits each start, and more strikeouts than innings pitched. And just a smooth delivery.
Who is a prospect that you are just like, you've got to watch them every day and you're super, super excited about?
Can we share this? Because I know we're trying to save for later in the season pickups, right? So mine was initially Elijah Green. I've been watching a lot of single-A ball, but it's actually the other player on that team that is breaking out big time, and they're playing him at third instead of short. That's a long-term plan, and that's Brady House. His pitch recognition has been incredible. Which he's always been for a big guy. That's always been the plus about him, besides the 70+ power. Now he has that with the power. He's being selective. He's in the middle of that lineup. I think he's about 333 plus 1,000 OPS, and not just hitting tons of home runs. It's balanced when it comes to doubles. So he's turning out to be a hitter, and if I had roster space in our home league, I'd pick him up immediately, but I do not.
I've got there's about 30 of those guys on my list. I feel that way about. Mine is Termar. I'm just excited. I think I got the bootleg from our jersey with the Johnson on the back. I'm guessing he's going to be number 2, but that's just a guess off the top of my head. But him and Cam Collier are the two that I think I'm really attached to, and then I try to follow their stats and get at bats and stuff off of Twitter as much as I can. I've got
Pittsburgh. Gotta love Pittsburgh.
Yeah,
gotta love Pittsburgh.
They're a fun watch. And they're going to be even more fun as these guys keep coming up. And I think they have the number 1 pick. They're probably going to take Dylan Cruz. Then you've got Cruz. You've got Johnson. You've got O'Neal Cruz, right? You've got Reynolds just signed a long-term contract. They've got your boy Ji-Wan Bae. It's going to be – they're going to be a fun franchise. I hope they have enough pitching. To kind of push them through, but it's going to be they're a lot of fun to watch. I think next episode we should talk about, some of the players we see on the verge of coming up, some of the good investments fantasy wise. I've got a long list of players that we didn't get to, And then maybe the episode after that, we'll talk about some of the lower minors guys as we get more numbers on them. But it's fun. There's not enough hours in the day to be able to go over all this
Yes,
stuff, right?
absolutely.
I love it. All right, man.
Cool,
You got
man.
anything else?
Not really, no. I think it's been fun. And there's players that maybe I've rostered in the past that I've cut that are coming back to kill me. So Jaron Duran, it's really nice to see him get the opportunity.
Yeah.
He's learning center field, but he's hitting the crap out of the ball, being selective, and he's fast as hell too. So I just hope I'm playing a team that has him this week, and I'm hoping his steals breakout comes next week.
Right on, man. It's good chatting with you, brother.
All right.
All right.
Take it easy.
Talk soon.